She thought I wasn't paying attention in class, but the truth is, I only ever saw her. The afternoon sun filtered through the wide classroom windows, painting the desks with pale streaks of gold. Dust motes floated lazily in the light, swirling every time someone shifted in their chair. Pages rustled. Pens tapped. Most students seemed restless, their minds anywhere but here. But me, my focus was fixed on one person. She stood at the front of the room, chalk in hand, her movements precise yet graceful as she underlined a passage on the board. Her voice carried that perfect balance between authority and warmth, firm enough to command respect, soft enough to draw you closer without realizing it. Every word she spoke seemed to settle in the air differently when it came from her. She was my literature teacher. 42 years old, confident in the way she held herself, yet there was something behind her eyes, a quiet heaviness, the kind people only notice if they're paying attention. And I was. When she paced between the rows, the faint scent of her perfume trailed behind, subtle but lingering, like pages of an old book infused with memory. As she leaned over one student's desk, her cardigan sleeve brushed against my arm for the briefest second. The contact was accidental, meaningless to her. But to me, it sent a sharp jolt through my chest, like my heartbeat had been startled awake. I tried to look at my notes, tried to appear just another face in the crowd. Yet every detail about her drew me in, the way her hair fell loose near her shoulders, the way her glasses slipped down and she pushed them back with an absent motion, the way her expression softened when she thought no one was looking. Around me, classmates sighed, doodled, and whispered. To them, she was just another teacher. But to me, she was impossible not to notice. Every word she spoke felt like it carried a secret meant only for me. Every step she took echoed louder than it should have. When she glanced in my direction, her eyes lingered a second longer than usual. Maybe it was my imagination. Maybe it wasn't. My chest tightened as I quickly looked down, pretending to scribble something on the page. That was the first time I realized the truth. She thought I wasn't paying attention. But in reality, she was the only thing I saw. The library was nearly empty that evening. Only the low hum of the fluorescent lights above and the faint rustle of turning pages disturbed the silence. Rows of books towered around me like watchful sentries, their spines faded with time. The air smelled of old paper and coffee left too long in mugs. I sat with my notes spread out before me, trying to focus. But my attention kept drifting, as it always did, toward her. She was seated 2 tables away, her posture straight at first, then softening as she grew tired. Her glasses slid down the bridge of her nose every few minutes, and she would push them back with the most absent-minded grace. Strands of dark hair escaped from the clip at the back of her head, falling loosely to frame her face. I should have been reading lines of poetry, but instead, I was memorizing the curve of her jaw in the dim light. Every so often, she sighed, a soft, unguarded sound that carried across the silence and pulled me in. It wasn't a sound of frustration, more like the weight of the day had caught up with her. And no one else seemed to notice. No one ever did. But I did. My eyes returned to the book in front of me, though the words blurred into nonsense. Then I felt movement beside me. She had risen quietly, carrying a stack of books, and placed them on the table across from mine. For a moment, she leaned down to arrange the pile. The faint scent of her perfume, warm, familiar, comforting, brushed past me again, and I almost forgot to breathe. Struggling with that passage. Her voice was lower now, softer, as though the library itself demanded secrets instead of lectures. I nodded, suddenly aware of how close she was. She pulled the chair beside me without hesitation, setting the book down between us. Her sleeve brushed against mine as she leaned forward to point at a line, her finger tracing the words slowly, patiently. Her hair slipped from behind her ear, and for one insane second, I wanted to reach up and tuck it back. But I didn't. I stayed still, pretending to focus, even as my chest tightened with every inch of space closing between us. She explained the text with clarity, her voice a quiet rhythm that made even the driest lines feel alive. And though I heard her words, I wasn't really listening to the book. I was listening to her. Watching the way her lips formed the syllables, the way her eyes softened when she realized I was finally understanding. To anyone else, it was just another study session. But to me, it was something else entirely, the first time her world and mine blurred into the same space, as though we were no longer teacher and student, but simply two people breathing in the same quiet moment. The last bell had rung long ago. The building was quiet now, emptied of laughter, footsteps, and chatter. Only the hum of the lights and the echo of my own shoes filled the hallway as I walked toward the exit. My bag hung loosely over my shoulder, books shifting inside. Then I heard her voice. "Wait." I turned, and there she was, standing in the doorway of the classroom, clipboard in her hand, her expression caught between amusement and reprimand. She stepped into the hall, heels clicking softly against the tiled floor, her presence filling the empty space with a kind of gravity that pulled me closer without effort. "You never pay attention in class," she said, her tone firm, but softened by the faintest curve of a smile tugging at her lips. The word struck me harder than she intended. For a second, I froze, torn between pretending to laugh it off or saying what I'd been holding back for weeks. My pulse quickened. My palms felt warm. Something in the way she looked at me, expectant, teasing, unaware of how much her attention meant, pushed me past hesitation. "Only to you," I said quietly, the words slipping out before I could think. Silence fell, heavier than any lecture or reprimand could have been. Her eyes widened, just slightly, as if I had stepped somewhere I shouldn't. The clipboard pressed tighter to her chest, a barrier between us, yet her lips parted as if she wanted to say something and couldn't find the words. My throat went dry. Had I gone too far? Should I have laughed instead, kept it safe, kept it ordinary? But I didn't regret it, not even when the pause stretched too long. She shifted, glancing down the empty hallway, then back at me. Her voice, when it came, was softer than before, almost hesitant. "Careful with words like that." Her warning wasn't sharp. It trembled, as though even she wasn't certain which line I had crossed, or if she wanted me to step back. I nodded, not trusting myself to say anything more. My grip tightened around the strap of my bag, grounding me. But inside, I felt something shift, something undeniable, something that couldn't be explained away as a joke or a slip of the tongue. As she turned back toward the classroom, her shoulders stiff but her steps slower than usual, I realized I had changed everything in a single sentence. She thought I never paid attention. But now she knew the truth, my attention had been hers all along. Rain fell steadily against the tall classroom windows, a constant rhythm that softened the silence of the empty room. The last of the students had hurried out with umbrellas and laughter, leaving the air heavy with the smell of damp clothes and chalk dust. I lingered in the hallway, unsure why my steps slowed as I passed by. Through the glass, I saw her, still at her desk, red pen in hand, shoulders slightly hunched as she graded papers. The light above her desk cast a warm glow across her face, highlighting the faint weariness in her eyes. For a moment, she seemed far away from the strict teacher I knew. She looked human. Tired, maybe even lonely. I pushed the door open with an excuse already on my tongue. "I think I left my book." She looked up, surprised, her glasses sliding a little down her nose. "At this hour?" Her tone carried suspicion, but not enough to push me away. I shrugged, feigning casualness. "Guess I'm more forgetful than I thought." She gave a small smile, the kind that didn't quite reach her eyes, and gestured toward the stack on the shelf. "Go on, then." I walked past her, the rain tapping like fingertips against the glass. My book was there, of course, but I didn't pick it up right away. Instead, I glanced back at her. "You always stay this late?" Her pen stilled. For a moment she hesitated, then she sighed. "Sometimes. Papers don't grade themselves. And it's quieter this way." Her words held something more than routine. They held solitude. I sat on the edge of the nearest desk, book still untouched in my hand. Quieter can get lonely. Her eyes flicked to mine, startled, as if I had seen something she never meant to show. She opened her mouth to respond but stopped, her gaze drifting instead to the rain-soaked windows. Maybe. But you learn to live with it. The silence stretched, broken only by the steady patter of rain. I could feel the closeness of her world, fragile and unguarded, brushing against mine. I set the book down and leaned slightly closer, not enough to cross a line, but enough to let her know I was listening. When our sleeves brushed as I handed her a paper from the corner of the desk, the warmth of her arm lingered against mine. She didn't pull back right away. For a second, just a second, it felt like neither of us was a teacher or a student, we were simply two people caught in the quiet of the rain. The school garden was nearly deserted that evening. The last of the students had long gone, their laughter replaced by the quiet rustle of leaves swaying in the breeze. The sky had turned soft with dusk, painting everything in muted shades of blue and amber. I walked slowly, hoping the air might clear my thoughts, when I heard footsteps behind me. It was her. She carried a stack of folders against her chest, but her expression was lighter than I had seen in days. When our eyes met, she gave a small, unexpected laugh. I didn't think anyone else stayed this late. Guess I had nowhere better to be, I answered, falling into step beside her. The path wound between rows of hedges, the scent of earth and fresh leaves rising around us. She spoke more freely here, away from the walls of the classroom. Little things, a book she had been rereading, a memory of when she first started teaching. Her voice was softer, unguarded. For the first time, it felt like she wasn't just talking at me, but with me. We reached a corner of the garden where the ivy climbed high against the brick wall. She stopped for a moment, brushing back her hair as the wind tugged at it. That's when I noticed it, a small leaf, caught just above her temple. I hesitated, my heart stumbling over itself. Should I point it out? Should I step closer? My hand lifted before I could think, trembling slightly. I began, but my voice caught. She tilted her head, curious, and I reached forward carefully. My fingers brushed against her hair as I plucked the leaf free. It was such a simple gesture, but the moment stretched, endless, as if the world itself had paused to watch. Her breath caught, quiet but unmistakable. Her eyes lifted to mine, steady yet unreadable, and for the briefest instant she didn't move away. The warmth of her hair lingered against my fingertips, and I realized I hadn't taken a full breath since touching her. "Thank you," she said finally, her voice lower, carrying something heavier than gratitude. I nodded, unable to speak. The silence between us was no longer empty, it was thick with something unspoken, something neither of us dared to name. We began walking again, closer than before. Not close enough for anyone else to notice, but close enough that I could feel her presence beside me, her sleeve brushing mine with every step. And with each brush, the truth pressed deeper, this wasn't just attention anymore. It was something neither of us could ignore. The classroom looked different at night. The rows of desks, usually filled with restless chatter, sat in perfect silence. Only the glow of a small desk lamp lit the room, throwing golden pools of light across scattered papers. Outside, the world was dark, the windows reflecting only fragments of us in the stillness. She sat at her desk, her cardigan pulled tight around her shoulders, red pen forgotten beside her hand. I stood near the doorway at first, uncertain if I should even step inside. Something about the quiet felt sacred, like walking into a place where truths couldn't be hidden. "Why are you still here?" she asked softly, her voice weary but not unkind. I took a breath, moving closer, my shoes clicking against the floor. "Maybe for the same reason you are." Her eyes lifted to mine, searching. "And what reason would that be?" I hesitated. I could have said I wanted help with work, that I had forgotten something again. But I didn't. Not this time. My heart pounded in my chest, pushing the truth out of me. Because it feels different here, when it's just us. The words hung in the air, heavier than the silence that followed. She straightened, her hands folding together tightly, as though holding on to her composure. You shouldn't say things like that. Why not? My voice was quiet but steady. It's not a game to me. I'm not distracted in class, I'm not restless. I see you. Every word, every detail. You think I don't pay attention, but the truth is, you're the only thing I pay attention to. Her lips parted, but no words came at first. The lamplight caught in her eyes, and for once, I saw something raw there, not the teacher, not the professional distance, but a woman who felt the weight of being seen too closely. You don't understand, she whispered finally. People would talk. They'd never see it the way you do. They'd judge. I'd be judged. I moved closer, stopping just beside her desk. My hand rested near hers, not touching, but close enough that the warmth of her skin brushed mine in the space between. I don't care what they'd say. I don't see you as untouchable. I see you as someone who makes me feel alive in a way nothing else has. Her breath trembled. For a moment, she didn't move her hand away. The air between us felt charged, as if one small step would collapse the distance entirely. But then she drew back, not harshly, but with the kind of hesitation that comes from fear colliding with longing. And in that hesitation, I knew, we were standing on the edge of something neither of us could deny. Dawn light seeped gently through the tall classroom windows, soft and golden, washing away the heaviness of the night. The rain had stopped hours ago, leaving behind the scent of damp earth drifting in from the open window. The building was still asleep, no footsteps, no voices, just silence broken only by the occasional creak of wood as the old school settled into the new day. She sat at her desk, papers untouched, a coffee cup cooling beside her hand. I stood near the rows of chairs, unsure if I should leave or stay. The conversation from last night still clung to the air, fragile and unspoken, as though neither of us dared to name what had already taken root. Her eyes lifted to mine, and this time she didn't look away. There was no sternness in her expression, no barrier of authority, just a quiet vulnerability that mirrored my own. You shouldn't be here so early, she said, though her voice lacked the firmness of a rule. It sounded more like a confession. Neither should you, I replied, smiling faintly. That small exchange broke the distance. I walked closer, my steps slow, steady, until I was beside her desk. She didn't move away. Instead, she sighed and leaned back slightly, her shoulders lowering as though she had carried too much weight for too long. Without thinking, I pulled a chair close and sat beside her. The silence wrapped around us like a blanket, not empty but full, of everything we hadn't said, everything we didn't need to say. She shifted, and to my surprise, she leaned gently against me. Her head rested against my shoulder, her hair brushing my jaw, soft and warm. My breath caught, but I didn't move. I couldn't. The steady rhythm of her breathing filled the space between us, grounding me in a moment I wanted to hold forever. For the first time, there were no lessons, no rules, no roles we were supposed to play. Just her and me, two people who had found something rare in the unlikeliest place. Her hand moved slightly, brushing against mine on the desk. Slowly, carefully, her fingers curled around my own. The touch was delicate, hesitant, but real. I closed my hand gently over hers, feeling the warmth of her skin, the quiet pulse of life that matched the beating in my chest. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. The dawn light filled the room, wrapping us in its glow, and for once, silence wasn't heavy or uncertain, it was perfect. And in that silence, I knew, she thought I never paid attention. But she was wrong. I had been paying attention all along, only to her.